This is Bob Gorgoglione again with part 3 of Towards Socialist America. And the purpose of this is to show that the Republicans, I should say, the communists, the Nazis, and the corporate socialists, usually called fascists, and the Republican Democrats, as we'll see, are essentially all the same. They're all collectivists and socialists. And we'll see that as we go along. I got to step back a little bit because I misquoting at least 5 of the 10 points of the Communist Manifesto. 5 of the most important that have already been put in forth in the United States. And in essence, what it says here is that, well, I'll put it this way. In order to comprehend more fully just how far down the socialist road under both Democratic and Republican administrations we have traveled, consider the following extracted from the 10-point plank of the Communist Manifesto. 1. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes, such as confiscation and ownership of vast areas of land by both the federal and state governments, national parks, state parks, and with the remaining private lands under multiple restrictions and regulations. So if the government doesn't own it outright, it owns what remains indirectly through regulation, especially environmental regulations. If you want to try to do something with the land that you have, whether it's your backyard or especially if you own a larger amount of land, you've got to have permission from the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the state and local environmental agencies have to come in and inspect. And a friend of mine, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine wanted to go into the development business, building homes and duplexes and selling them. So he starts out, he buys 2 acres of land, he's going to put 2 duplexes, 2 buildings there. And come to find out, and he told me about this about 6 months into it. And he says that, well, it hasn't been finished yet, haven't started building yet because of all the government regulations of environmental, the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, state and local officials and so forth. And I said, well, it looks like it's not going to happen. Oh, yeah, it'll happen. You just be nice and polite to the bureaucrats. Everything will work out. A year later, I saw him, another 6 months, and I said, what's the latest? He said, I sold the land. If you just take this and multiply it 100,000 times throughout the economy of the United States, you can see why there's no real growth in productivity and economic development. And that goes on here. Number 2, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. We have that on the federal level beginning in 1913, and since then, the state governments have hopped on and have done the same thing. The city of New York has done it, some other cities have done it. So now you have not only the income tax, you've already got the sales tax, got the property tax, and property tax, sales tax, income tax. So we see a fulfillment of the Communist Manifesto at that point. Number 6, centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Well, to begin with, they owned the highways. At one time, back up until the 20s, a lot of these roads were private, but then the states took them over. In the 50s, the federal government started taking them over. And also, you have a lot of metropolitan bus companies or metropolitan communities, like for example, Salt Lake City and all the surrounding areas. They have a state-owned transportation company that provides all the transportation, but that's government-owned and government-controlled. You have government ownership of Amtrak and Conrail, but one of those has gone out of, they got rid of it, but still there's one railroad system that is owned by the federal government. And then also the trucking industry is so heavily regulated by the federal government with new regulations every year that they in effect really own the trucking industry because they can't do anything without government approval, inspection, and so forth. Then you go on, centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Well, we already mentioned transport, but communication, the FCC, they have complete control of radio and TV. They control who can have a license, how many are allowed to have licenses. If they don't like your programming and it's not politically correct, you could lose your license. To keep it simple, there's a lot more to it than that. and go on. Free education for all children in public schools. First of all, education is not free. You pay a lot of property taxes. I believe, if I got it right, that the majority of tax money that goes to education is property taxes. At least that was the case when I came from Connecticut. And so therefore it's not free. Plus, the state and now the federal government control the curriculum. They have very strict rules. I've talked to a number of school teachers. They have very strict rules and regulations. The teachers must teach exactly the way the manual and the rules and regulations require. They cannot innovate. They cannot sidestep. They cannot be creative. And that's one of the things that a woman who used to live next door here was a teacher for about a year. And because she tried to be innovative and she was being very successful in getting the kids to be productive and to enjoy education, and when they saw what was happening and it wasn't coming out of the manual and the books and the rules, they fired her. So they control what the kids are learning. So these public schools are no longer schools of gaining knowledge and education. They're centers of indoctrination. They've allowed, because of the federal and state governments controlling it, they've allowed the teaching that homosexuality is normal, lesbianism is normal, same-sex marriage is normal, abortion is okay, premarital sex is okay, as long as you wear your blankety blank. And so we see that they've gotten complete control of what goes into the minds of our children. The parents have no say. The old days, you go back 50, 60 years ago, the local school board was controlled by the local people, and they controlled the curriculum, they controlled the money, they controlled everything. But now it's gone to the state and federal level, and now they're trying to go to the international level, where all the schools and all the nations around the world are going to be brought together through the internet to be controlled by the United Nations. So now we go and show, and we can see the Republican Democrats have been supporting this public education, which is really, they're not really public schools, they are government schools. And by the way, the communists had government schools, the Nazis had government schools, the corporate socialists in Italy had government schools, and we have government schools. So, at least to that extent, the Republican Democrats are socialists. And then we come to Mussolini. We have here the striking similarities between FDR's New Deal of the 1930s and Mussolini's corporate socialism. And I'm going to do a little quote here from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I have wanted the government, above all, to give great care to the social legislation needed to carry out our part of agreed international programs for industry and for those who bear the future of industry. In fact, it has ratified the law for the 8-hour day, for obligatory insurance, for regulation of the work of women and children, for assistance and benefits, for after-work diversion and adult education, and finally, for obligatory insurance against tuberculosis. All this shows how, in every detail in the field of labor, I stand by the working class. All that is possible to do without working an injury to the principle of solidarity in our economy, I have set out to do, from the minimum wage to the continuity of employment, from insurance against accident or indemnity to indemnity against illness, from old age pensions to proper regulation of the military services. There is little which social research has not already been advanced by me. I want to give every man and woman so generous an opportunity that work will not be a painful necessity, but a joy of life. But I have to make I have to apologize. That was not Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That is Mussolini, the corporate socialist leader of Italy. And you can see it sounds just like the New Deal. So we'll pick up again another time. Thanks. You got it all?
That one's all messed up.